Carly.
Good evening. It's 5:02, and with all 9 board members present, we'll call this meeting to order, and the moment of silence and pledge of allegiance will be led by Ms. Fugit tonight.
It's the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we just have one announcement. The Superintendent Evaluation Committee will hold their initial meeting this Wednesday, July 11th at 3:30 in the small board conference room on the first floor of the Andrew Johnson Building. The committee consists of Jennifer Owen, who will serve as chair of the committee, Terry Hill, and Susan Horn. And thank you, ladies, for agreeing to do this. I see no elected officials in the audience tonight, so we'll move on to changes to the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing no lights on, do I hear a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Motion made by Ms. Roundtree.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Horn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next is the introduction of the 2018-2019 Board of Education Student Representative. I want to take just a moment and introduce our 2018-2019 Student Representative, Ms. Hannah Self of Hardin Valley Academy. As you may know, Hannah was selected by our Student Selection Committee after a long, very detailed application and interview process. She is the winner of multiple Tennessee TSA competitive awards and the recipient of the HVA Soaring Hawk Award, as well as the STEM Student of the Month. Hannah was a Gold Card student and on the 4.0 honor row and was selected for the HVA Upper Level Wind Ensemble Band. As a freshman, she served as the Tennessee TSA State Sergeant at Arms, and as a sophomore, the Tennessee TSA State Secretary. She also served as Tennessee Department of Education intern and a Tennessee TSA State Officer Coach and Executive Council member during her junior year. She has multiple extracurricular and co-curricular activities ranging from fundraising for the American Cancer Society to the Mu Alpha Theta Math Club and serving as STEM ambassador to HVA underclassmen. But the statement on one of her recommendations said it best, and I quote, "If selected as student representative, Hannah would certainly be one of the most qualified and experienced people to ever hold the position. I've met with many leaders from around the country, both in and outside of TSA, and Hannah is undoubtedly one of the best." So please join me in welcoming Hannah to the board. We're glad to have you, Hannah. Next is the superintendent's report. Superintendent Thomas.
Hey, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I hope that everyone, first of all, had a 4th of July that was enjoyable last week. So thank goodness everyone was safe, and appreciate the fact that we have the 4th of July to celebrate every year, and thank our service folks for making it so. I'll be real brief tonight, just a few announcements. In terms of appointments that I've made, Dr. Elizabeth Howard, Assistant Principal of Hardin Valley Academy, will be Principal at Powell Middle School. Jason Myers, Principal of Knoxville Adaptive Education Center, has been appointed as Principal at Bearden High School. Brent Glenn, Assistant Principal at Austin East High School, has been appointed Principal of Carnes Middle School. April Parton, Assistant Principal of Carnes Elementary School, has been appointed Principal of Shannondale Elementary School. On June 29, a team of 5 students at Carter Middle School sent an experiment to the International Space Station through the Student Spaceship Experiment Program, SSEP, in partnership with DreamUp. This is the first year the school has been involved in SSEP, and their project looked at the effect of microgravity on tooth decay. The ribbon cutting events for our 2 new middle schools have been scheduled for Tuesday, July 10. Tomorrow, that's Gibbs at 10 a.m. and Hardin Valley at 2 p.m. The Principals Institute will take place on July 12 and 13 at Bearden High School for 2 days. All of our principals and assistant principals will participate in sessions focused on professional development and leadership. It will be a great way to jumpstart the new year. Class schedules for the upcoming school year will be made available online for all students on July 26. Again, July 26, all schedules made available online. Schedules will be accessible on Family Portal, formerly Parent Portal, at knoxschools.org. To help ensure the safety and confidentiality of our students, schedules will not be posted publicly at school locations. However, families are welcome to visit their student's school to pick up a copy after July 26. Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Thomas. Are there any questions for him regarding his report? Okay, we'll move into the discussion of the July the 11th Board of Education regular session agenda and look at items and contracts. I believe we have 25 of those to review. Is there any discussion or question on 7C1? C2, 7C3. Mr. Norman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did have a few questions about this, really in reference to the team evaluation system. So who would I direct it to?
Ms. Drummond.
Oh.
Dr. Drummond?
Yes.
Thanks, Kelly. First of all, I guess, how many of our teachers now are going to go through team compared to last year or previous years? Yes, go ahead.
The majority of the schools still use the team, all of them use the team rubric, and this process is a scripting tool that just allows us to document this and put the information into the RANDA system that goes directly into the state. So this is just a tool just for them to document, but they're still using the rubric. But even though Tiger, some may be using Tiger, and I'm not sure how many schools are using Tiger, the rubric is still the rubric.
Okay, and I guess that's a basic question too then. Based on what happened last year with Tiger and its acceptability by teachers or schools or whatever, do you know anything about that?
I cannot discuss anything about Tiger, and I'm not sure who can.
Dr. Risley, do you?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll take a shot, Mr. Norman, at explaining some of that. The schools that did use it, we had folks were happy about that, and as Dr. Drummond just explained, the main difference in that is really around the process as opposed to the tool that's used. We had very little overall, and I know Dr. Russell led most of that work, issues with people struggling with the rubric. It was more the process and how those things happen. So what Tiger allowed was those schools to have a little more flexibility, not as many post-conferencing, kind of an open window to continue to collect evidence and that sort of thing. And I know I've had individual conversations with Dr. Chad Smith at Powell, Mr. Seavey at Farragut High School, some of those schools, they very much liked it, and they very much plan to use it again this year. So the schools that did, again, they kind of self-selected because we took volunteers for that, but their plan, based on talking to Dr. Russell, is to continue to use that for the upcoming year.
Okay, so that's the question, though. I was wondering about the expansion of Tiger into the other schools. If they wanted to, do we have any provision for those schools to adopt Tiger who were using team before?
I was just talking to Dr. Drummond. That's a conversation we probably need to have to see moving into this year, but to this point, I don't think we've held that conversation. Okay,
then the only other thing here is I noticed that in the contract it had, I don't know, several things that I didn't understand. TN Compass, Frontline Education, Teach Point, Boston Mass outfit. What's that stuff mean?
The TN Compass excuse me, I'm sorry, the T Encompass and the Frontline are our ability to be able to document their days of service, and then it goes into T Encompass. That is, the tool is just the ability to upload, and we needed to pay, when they take the notes, we have to pay for that service to be able to upload it so it can go into the T Encompass and can be documented and written in there.
Okay. It said, last thing, 800 observers, 4,938 teachers at a cost of $29,800. So that's what we expect for this year, then I assume.
Yes, sir.
4,938 teachers going through team.
The 5,700, you're talking about the 57, it's the license up to 5738.
Oh, okay. But there was a note in there that said it was for that number of teachers, 4,938.
The total licensure will go up to that number.
Okay. So we'll need to fund it at the rate of $29,800 regardless for this year.
I think we're asking for the 22, the 22.5.
It's going to be 22.5.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I won't bother you anymore on this. I'll get with you later, Kayla. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on item 7C? Okay. 7C, number 4. 7C5. Any discussion? 7C6. Discussion. Item number 7, any discussion? Item number 8, discussion on this item. Item 9. Item 10. Item 11. Item 12. Item number 13, discussion. Item number 14. Item number 15. Discussion on item 16. Item 17. 18. 19. 20. Item 21. Item 22. Item 23. Item 24. And lastly, item 25. Had I known, I would have just done 1 through 25. I didn't know. Never know. Okay, so next, looking at board policies, we only have 2. Item 8A, is there any discussion on this second reading of this policy? Okay. Item 8B, this is a second reading also. Any discussion on this, the integration of the T-CAP scores and student grades? Okay. Then we'll move on into grants with item 9. Item 9A through F are all receipt of funds from the Department of Education. Are there any discussions on items A through F, which I'll relate to the state of Tennessee, Department of Ed? Okay, and then items 9G through L all involve Great Schools Partnership and Memorandum of Understandings. Is there any discussion on any of these Memorandum of Understandings with Great Schools Partnership? Okay, and then the last one is 9M. Any discussion on the receipt of funds from Verizon? Okay, moving right into the regular agenda items. Superintendent Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Under regular agenda items 10A, I would like to make a request to withdraw the line item transfers and include these line item transfers in the end of the year once the fourth quarter is completed. So these transfers would actually show up in that, but we do the sweep of the accounts at the end of the fiscal year. So would like to just withdraw this item and take it under consideration when we bring all the line item sweeps to the board.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Fugit.
Is that probably going to be in September or?
More than likely August, with the fiscal year, of course, ends June 30th, but it does take a couple of months usually for things to clear. So more than likely would be September.
Okay.
Any other discussion on that? Okay, item 10B is the approved resolution to express safe routes to schools and active student transportation. And just a word about that. I serve on the Coordinated School Health Advisory Committee, so for the past couple of years have attended their meetings, and this originally started out with a request for a new board policy, but we have worked in between the board and Ramona Dew and people in the central office, along with the other members, have worked to come up with this resolution that we would like for you to consider. And we have Ellen Saviska in the audience that can answer any questions you might have about it. And we have a short video that I thought you might want to see on the walking school bus. So we also have a report for the future with a study that's been done in conjunction with a doctoral student at UT that was not able to be here tonight about the cost savings for Knox County according to the study that he's done. But we're going to try to schedule him in the future. So we'll open that up to discussion, or we can watch the video first. Okay. Miss, you ready?
Ms. Quinton, right? Do not cross the road.
Of our students that walk from school to home or home to school in the morning. What the walking school bus does is let them walk together with an adult to get safely to their house.
Come on, guys, let's go around. You can step down.
The first urgent need that caught my attention were that students were crossing Western Avenue at a very busy intersection with 5 streets. We had students as young as kindergarten walking home across Western Avenue.
Homer, back behind the pole.
It was very terrifying.
That was my concern, them crossing the roads by themselves, trying to make that journey home. And like I said, we're walking kindergartners all the way through 5th grade home.
As soon as the bell rings, they are ready and want to get their vest on and walk.
It's an opportunity to get to spend time with the children outside of school, get to know the children in a different environment. It's a time for exercise. I love the exercise after school.
Definitely the numbers have grown, and we started out last spring with 6 to 8 students, and now we are approaching 30. We have had to add a second route to meet the needs, and we could probably add a third at this point. We have students signed up all year long.
Hi, how are you? We meet a lot of people as we walk the children home, get an opportunity to speak to the people in the community. I even had one gentleman stop me. He said, I want to thank you for walking these children home. It just makes you feel good to be a part of the community and for the community to appreciate what it is we do outside of school.
It has enhanced neighborhood involvement, increased the healthy exercise, and most importantly, kept kids safer.
So this is just one, I think that concludes the video. This is just one portion of this. Basically, this is just, in my opinion, is a resolution saying that Knox County supports the benefits for active transportation, but it leaves, in working with the law department and refining this, it leaves the responsibility for the most part with the parents, but it also, since Tennessee is, the statistics just came out and we're still one of the most obese states in the nation, this just addresses some of that, and so I don't know. Ms. Zaviska, do you want to come up and entertain any questions that the board might have concerning your role in this and what you coordinate and do for Knox County?
Sure. Thank you so much for hearing me out this evening. Ellen Zaviska. I serve on the staff of the Knox County Metropolitan Planning Commission as a transportation planner, and have been working with Ms. Bounds for a while now as part of the Knox County Safe Routes to School Partnership, which we co-coordinate with the Knox County Health Department. And the walking school bus is one of the many programs we work on. We work on improving the pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure at and around schools, working especially with Knox County Engineering and City of Knoxville Engineering. And I appreciate y'all considering this resolution.
Ms. Fugit.
Thank you. I'm in support of the resolution. I just have a question in regard to walking, because one of the things that I hear from my constituents quite a bit is that, especially older children, middle school age children, that school doesn't start till 8:30 and they are within the parent responsibility zone, and they might like to walk to school, but there are no sidewalks. Do you work with the city and the county as they prioritize their planning for sidewalks? And our schools, can we help encourage schools to be further up? Lord, you cut me. I cut out, and I'm talking in support of this. But I really do think more people, especially older children, parents might avail their children of walking. But I know Beard Middle School in particular is a pretty busy road. That's a lot of people that live within that responsibility zone, and I get phone calls about that. But you know, elementary school kids' parents maybe walk with them, but the middle schoolers and the high schools around the county could use better sidewalk within the parent responsibility zone.
Yes, I mean, the short answer to that is yes. We do work closely with engineering departments in the city, county, town of Farragut as well. Both city and county and town of Farragut put local funds, sometimes federal funds, toward constructing sidewalks. It's not enough to catch up anytime soon. One of the great successes we've seen through the Safe Routes to School partnership is that for the first time, Knox County Engineering has started putting funds toward pedestrian safety. That's just the last couple of years. They've never done that before. And I shared some information that hopefully got to all of you about the investments they've made at a couple of different schools in the county to add segments of sidewalk, safer crossing opportunities, Cedar Bluff, Bluegrass Elementary, those locations. So there's a lot of need out there. But actually, both the city and the county are doing studies on specifically sidewalk needs, which I think is a partly response to all this pressure too. Thanks.
Any more questions? Mr. Norman?
Yes, thanks, Ellen. Is there any provision or possibility that these neighborhoods that were built prior to sidewalks, and they don't really have sidewalks or any access like that, is there any way to retrofit, or how does the MPC do anything related to pedestrian traffic in older subdivisions that don't have access? Mm-hmm. Is there any way to get around that?
That would really be up to the city and the county and Farragut to retrofit those streets for more walkability, either with sidewalks or in some cases where you have like a low volume, low speed street, just things like traffic calming, so that the street itself becomes a safer place to walk because people are already walking in that street. So one thing we're trying to do at MPC, actually MPC has done, is change the subdivision requirements to require sidewalks in most subdivisions going forward, and that's a big change. There was some pushback on that. We're expecting that to take effect early next year, that change, after we hash out some details. But that will help us to not be falling so far behind, but there's a lot to catch up on, and it's going to mean investing in sidewalks, or like I said, in some cases, traffic calming, which is a lot lower cost generally.
Mr. Etheridge?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also support the resolution because I think walking school buses are very important. I have had a lot of my parents, they live within the walkability from their home to the school. But I noticed that in the video that they usually walk the kids to meet the parents at some point? Or do they actually walk them closer to the house? And if so, how much of the liability is it on the teachers and the principals to walk the kids up so far? It just depends, I guess, on the schools.
Yeah, it does. It does depend on the program. So when we go to work with a school on a walking school bus, the health department usually takes the lead on that. Great Schools Partnership and their staff are often very involved. Obviously, the school staff, parents, students, to figure out, because it does look a little bit different at each school. For example, I observed dismissal recently at Bell Morris Elementary, and they have, I think, 2 walking school bus groups. Both of those groups leave the school and they walk with the kids to different sort of pickup points. I think they're usually like church parking lots, and the parents will meet them there, or if the parents give permission, then the child is allowed to walk the additional, block or 2 home. Okay. So it's all done with, the feedback of parents in terms of what works best, depending on the age of the child and other things. So it really is, it's something that takes a lot of coordination to get going, but as we saw in that example at Westview, it's a really successful program, and people really get bought into it and excited when it's working.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll just say that I know some of the board members here have participated in the walking school bus, and our former superintendent did, I think, the day that I walked over at Christenberry, and maybe Jennifer was there as well. I think this resolution will help. So much of these things depend, I know from attending these coordinated school health advisory committee meetings, they depend on a lot of grants, and so just a verbal resolution saying that we support active transportation and that sort of thing will help them going forward in applying for grants, as well as maybe a little bit of pressure on new developers coming in. And I know there's been they would like to, all the people that make up this group would like to also see more, as schools get built, sidewalks be a part of that building process. When a new school is built, that sidewalks would be entertained as a part of that so that kids could access the different routes to get there. So anything I've left out, Ellen, that you would like to add to the resolution?
No, I don't think so. I just appreciate all the good questions and all the support. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Okay, item 10C is discussion and possible action on the 2018 through 2021 strategic plan. And Ms. Fugit?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board members, just first of all, I want to thank the committee of Knox County staff that actually put this plan together. As you recall, we, at our board retreat, I believe it was in September, I think we had it in September, we talked about that we had a 5-year strategic plan, but we wanted to change it, and we wanted to do a process this year to come up with a 3-year strategic plan, create a one-sheeter that was more understandable and easier to talk about. And so we allocated no money to that. We didn't hire anybody to do this for us, so it was the staff that pretty much did it as best we could. We had community meetings that got delayed because of snow, flu, and ice. So so everything kept getting later and later. So you're getting this in July. You only had a couple of weeks. Maybe people want to wait. It's possible action. We don't have to take action on it this month. We can take action on it next month to have people have more questions answered. But this is our first time to actually discuss it or to have questions answered. But what I wanted to do was thank the people that worked on the committee that took all that input and tried to distill this into a manageable plan. First of all, we were led ably by Clifford Davis, Dr. Davis. John Riswick was on the committee, Carly Harrington, Jeannie Delaney, Tammy Campbell, Abby Harris, and Brooke Rosser. I think Abby probably did the yeoman's work of the writing of it. And she's not here because she's got a hand cramp, I imagine. So, it's been quite a bit of work. What I will say that I feel good about in the 6 goals are, these are things that I've heard in community meetings, I've heard our superintendent talk about, and I've heard the board talk about, is basically the priorities, and that's really what a school system works on. One of the things that Dr. Davis can give you more detail about, but after Tim Young sort of looked and came up with sort of the big buckets, then the staff really looked at all the ideas and started trying to distill that into something that could be used as a plan. He worked with the departments within the school system to help design this, and that's what you have before you. If you need more detail than that, I'm not the woman to ask. That's why Clifford and Carly can answer any more detailed questions. I do know that the metrics are still being worked on. Some of them are still being worked on. I guess my hope would be is at some point, if not Wednesday in August, that the board could at least approve the written part. If you're not sure about all the metrics, those can continue to be worked on, but I do think until we have a new plan, we're still operating under the one that the board said they would like to change. And so I think if you want to talk about metrics, maybe in more detail, but that's just my hope, that this is the amount of work that's gone into this, and I think the goals are pretty much things that we've always talked about. So at this point, that's all I've got to say about it, and if you've got tough questions, ask Clifford.
Okay, Ms. Roundtree.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Fugit, for helping sort of lead the charge. And I know Clifford and everybody involved had probably lots of comments after we all got our drafts to look at. And just one of the things that I, maybe Clifford, you can help answer this, or perhaps John, mentioned in the strategic plan, it talks about and I think maybe Clifford, I'd send this in my comments to you, talks about the continuation of the year-long reading for teachers. And so I'm just curious what type of a program evaluation has been done on that, because I think it's, I'm not sure what evidence we have that shows that is working necessarily to keep continuing that training for 3 additional years.
Okay, Ms. Jackson.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the year-long reading course. So we started our program evaluation at the beginning of this with pre and post test, which was showing that we had the need because teachers were asking for the information, and what we saw in the pre and post test was a drastic difference in what they knew about reading instruction at the beginning of course and what they knew at the end. Something we've been working with our university partnerships, because they also see the need for increasing the amount of time students get to have reading instruction in their pre-service coursework. So we were filling that gap. As we've continued, we've gone into a stages of concern model where we're looking at, from our teachers, we're getting from them the level of time and attention that putting the reading course in place encourages them to think about reading instruction. We have survey data that we have collected from them that is overwhelmingly positive. One of the things that we have discovered is that in our latest post-test, in our latest pre-test actually, the scores were so high that we started to question, we're seeing some of the work take off, and that there's a bleed over effect from those who've already been in the course, sharing that information with PLCs, but also I think some of the work we've done with the universities to help to lift up the importance of teaching reading to pre-service teachers has made it so that we are now going to be focusing on planning. We think that we will still offer the reading course to teachers who, but in smaller numbers, because we don't need to have the same number of sessions that we had in the past. So we are going to be working with them in planning teams, because what they're asking for now is time to take what they've learned and to help think through what that looks like in implementation. And we are getting together actually to look at what our next set of questions are and how we'll measure that as we move forward. We have performed well against the state in reading. We're in the 83rd percentile. There are only 24 districts that outperform us. One of them is the wealthiest in the state. The other one that looks a lot like us is only slightly above us, and everybody else is small and homogeneous. So we're trying to look at those who are doing better than we are, what are they doing, and how are districts that have the variation that we have, what are they doing in order to meet all the different needs across the district. So that's where we are right now with that.
Thanks, Shannon. And I guess that I just want to clarify as well, because it says every K-5 elementary teacher, and I know it's been an issue in the past when folks that are not necessarily embedded within a classroom to participate in the course. And so is the goal then to sort of, I think the idea of every teacher is a teacher of reading and literacy is really important. We've heard that on multiple levels. And so does that mean that this is going to be opened up then to every K-5 teacher?
We are looking at making sure that we can continue to offer for the ones who are in the classroom, with that responsibility of the K-5 reading, but also making sure that we have the literacy components for our teachers who are not necessarily assigned to the reading block. So we have had some sections that are specifically for our teachers with English language learners. They're asking for more. We have our school librarians and media specialists who are asking for opportunities to attend, and so we are looking at how we can work with those supervisors to make sure that we are providing that instruction in line with the goals of their courses, and make sure that they get to do the work that they want to do, but that we have that connected with that strong literacy understanding and that we're embedding those practices.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's also important because those same folks oftentimes are required to teach Tier 2 intervention. And so maybe if you're the gym teacher and you haven't had any background in reading instruction, I think it's maybe you don't need the whole year-long course, but it can certainly be beneficial and helpful.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And then just I want to add to whoever put this at number 1 at the top of the list, dedicated school-based reading specialist in every elementary school. I'm very happy to see that on there. Well, I did, and I actually got a teacher saw that and said, oh, does that mean, so is this happening for next year? So as a reminder, just to folks watching or listening at home, this is what I liken it to as the wish list of things that you would love to have, because putting a certified reading specialist in every elementary school, I don't know if anybody can give me the dollar figure for that off the top of their head, but I think it would be pretty costly. But I'm happy to see that at the top. Yes, their goals, and I'm happy to see that at the top of the list because I think that is very important. So, and I just appreciate again Clifford and the staff integrating, the feedback after we got our draft of this. So thank you.
Mr. Norman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know who this is directed to either, but I was just wanting someone to talk about academic goals, maybe in general. What are our academic goals? How do we determine those goals? How do we measure to see whether we've accomplished those? Just something about that.
I'll sort of talk about the process, and then I'll sort of defer to Dr. Roswick to talk about the specific goals. But basically, Mr. Young worked with us in terms of taking all the feedback from the community meetings, the surveys, and all the various discussions that happened along the way regarding the strategic plan. And basically what came out of that was 7 priorities. And then we looked at those 7 priorities, and then those 7 priorities turned into the 6 goals that you have before you. And then basically from that point, once we had the 6 goals in place, then we sort of sent the goals out to the various departments, and each department sent back its feedback in terms of the metrics that, well, first of all, how could they help advance that goal, and then the metrics that they would use to help advance that goal. And so on the academic side, that's where Dr. Roderick and the C&I people send in the metrics for the academic piece. So I'll sort of defer to him on that at that point.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Thank you, Mr. Norman. A lot of these, Mr. Norman, are ones that have been are required of us by the state. When we look at some of the literacy goals and some of those kind of goals that are set on page 19, and you probably looked at that, are kind of the metrics laid out to lay out with goal 1. You'll see a lot of these are based on literacy that we're held accountable to. A lot of these are moving into the EPSO, the early post-secondary opportunities that are required by the state for a ready graduate, which is going to be the new measure. The state this year will be using ACT and 21 as a marker for that, but then moving forward, they're going to start having some other things around ASVAB test, industry certification, some of those sorts of things. So both, again, a ready graduate could achieve an ACT score or have some other things that they do. AP scores or AP tests and courses, IB courses, those sorts of things are also counted for those. So there's things laid out in that. Career pathways also, again, looking toward the terminal when they leave high school, and are they ready to actually not just graduate, but ready to contribute. You'll see some different ones laid out there about expanding those offerings in CTE. And so those are around that. Around our ACT goals, I know that's one that you've expressed a lot of interest in. The two that we're looking at to track in that, 21 has been determined by ACT to be, college ready, what the state looks at too. We're looking at two areas there. One, to increase the district's composite, which is already over a 21. It's a 21.1 currently, but we're looking to increase that. And there are goals set for the baseline years all the way up to 2021. And then we also are looking to increase the number of students who are achieving that 21 or higher. So not only increase the composite score, but also increase the number of students getting there on that one.
Okay. How do we determine if somebody's career ready as they leave the system?
The state is defining some of that stuff based on, again, what they're calling a ready graduate, and a lot of this is pretty new to us. We've had a few folks come out and talk to our principals this year, and again, there's different criteria that you can meet that with, and I know Mr. Rutter's in the audience. He may want to speak to this too, but initially for this year, it's just the 21 on the ACT because that's the one they've traditionally used. So part of how districts will be scored as well as schools will be scored will be on that ready graduate number. And so our principals have been looking through that as we brought some state people in to talk to them about that. So this year it'll be off the ACT. Moving forward, it'll be based on the number of early post-secondary opportunities. Those can be dual enrollment courses, dual credit courses, AP courses, IB courses. So the number of those, there's a certain number they have to accrue in order to meet that if they don't have the ACT requirement. Industry certification is also one of those that students could get through their CTE programming that they take, that they could go through there. And then the ASVAB, which is a test, a lot of us are familiar with it. We usually associate with recruiters and that sort of thing for the military. They're setting a line for that students could achieve from that. So there'll be multiple ways in order to get over that line so that it allows to diversify for different students.
Okay. Since we're kind of, and have been kind of stuck on 21, 20 point something as far as our composite ACT for years now, in your discussion about academic goals, has there been discussion about, well, this would be some increase in that should be set as a goal and some timetable for reaching that set goal? Where are we in that kind of discussion?
It's a good question. What we have right now is a 21.1, and you're right, we've kind of been static there for 2 years. A lot of that has been because at one point our ACT was just calculated based on the students who took the test, and in recent years every student's taking the test. So more students, again, required for state graduation now is taking the ACT test. So we're testing more students, which has caused us to flatline a little bit. We didn't decrease, which is a good thing with more students taking it. What we've set for next year is a 21.5, and then for the year 2021, a 22.7 is our district-wide composite. So we have set in 2 intervals, trying to get to that 3-year total. We've also done the same for ready graduates. Currently, we're at 51.1% of our students. Again, it's on page 19, 100% of graduates deemed ready graduates. That one's based off the ACT of the 21 or higher. So currently we're at 51.1, and our goal for 2021 would be up to 62.2%. So about an 11-point gain is what we'd be looking at, percentage gain we'd be looking to make over 3 years.
Somehow I just overlooked those numbers. Did you say that's on page 19?
Correct. On page 19, it's listed as percent of it's the third box from the bottom, percent of graduates deemed ready graduates.
And the ACT scores that you mentioned are there too?
No, that's just the, currently, since that's what the state uses as a 21, that's what we use for this one to count that. So that's what it is. I'm looking over at my REA folks. Is that correct? We'll call Mr. John Beckett up if I could.
So just a couple of notes on that. For many of those metrics, we're just using what the state does to establish what the annual measurable objective is. So in case of the ready graduate, to get from the current number, the 51.6 to whatever, we just use their methodology. As far as the actual ACT, the mean composite, the 0.4 per year is what we've gone with. We thought that was a stretch goal, but a reasonable goal to shoot for. So there's no specific methodology for that one. But we had, I think it's at the end of the document, we had the actual numbers that we're shooting for. I'm not sure if I saw the last version, but we have the kind of the start numbers, which were basically based off of the school year 16-17 through that 2021 school year.
So have we been in discussion with ACT about increasing 0.4 per year? Are we getting help from ACT in this process?
I'm the numbers guy.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. We have we worked with ACT for the Aspire test for middle schools, and last year we had, top of my head, I'm trying to think, 8 or 9. Mr. Trent probably knows for sure, but 8 or 9 schools that were going to participate in that. Where we ran into some difficulties were kind of technical difficulties. Some of their systems didn't talk to our system, so by the time they were going to be able to launch that, we were into the spring semester, and the way that works, so there are multiple, I think there's 3, potentially 4 tests you can take in a given year that are kind of benchmarks for where that would be. So Mr. Trent and worked with Aspire and Ms. Jackson, and actually we're going to roll that out for 18-19 since there were some technical problems with it. We didn't figure a half year would work. So those same schools will roll that out in the middle schools this year. So we have that opportunity. We're also looking at some things in the pre-AP that we're going to pilot. I think Bearden High School is going to pilot some of that. So really what we're trying to do too is ramp up some of the course offerings that we know lead to higher ACT scores at the high school level and pilot that in some places, as well as try the Aspire in the middle school.
Okay, just want to say thank you for setting some measurable, solid goals for us on ACT. I think that'll be helpful. Yes, thanks.
Okay, any other questions concerning the strategic plan or discussion? I see no lights. Oh, okay.
Thank you, Patty. On goal 3, could you talk, who would be goal 3? Who would be, okay, Ms. Drummond. Under the first objective, update all job descriptions to include cultural proficiency as a criterion for employment. How would you go about doing that?
What we will do is review all job descriptions to determine if it has any bias in the language, and then we will make sure that there's no bias comments, for example, he, she, or those types of things in the language. So we will review all job descriptions. We are looking right now, we look at job descriptions as they're being posted, but we have a plan to update all job descriptions to make sure that they are appropriate and they're what we need to have.
Okay, thank you. And then also under positive culture, can you talk about on number 1, equip the staff to model and teach culturally competent and social emotional behaviors. Who can address the social emotional behavior part of that?
Dr. Reiswick.
Thank you, Ms. Bounds. Ms. Massey actually is at she's out on a trip scouting a recovery high school left this evening, so she's not able to be with us, so I'll try to take a shot at that. This is a continuation of the training that we've been working on with cultural competency and the goal to be able to move students through that, move the staff through that. So, wait a minute, I'm reading that wrong. Equip staff to model and teach cultural competency and social emotional.
Because it says to teach.
So
teach those things.
thinking more within the, okay, yeah, I was thinking it was more training for how they would react. You're talking more about within the content, so
Right,
I'll have Ms. Jackson speak to that.
Yeah, does that translate to the classroom?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is actually a place where Missy's department and my department merge together. The state has released social personal competencies at each grade band, and so it is about teaching students through the different content areas, and also we're working on it in our health classes and our wellness classes, PE classes. How do you self-advocate? How do you solve conflict? How do you approach a problem and solve a problem? And it's all designed so that it's appropriate for a kindergartner to know how to engage and self-advocate and to interact with other people in pro-social ways. And then it builds through the K-12 continuum. So that's something that we will be lifting up. The state has provided us some training materials on that. We're looking into those resources right now and looking to bring that as part of what we're focusing on in our teaching and learning days this year. And not only will we be focusing on how do we do that with our students, but how do we also take care of each other as adults so that we can take care of our students.
Okay, and so what about, does character, there used to be character counts, does that factor into that, or is it replacing it, or is it in conjunction with it?
That is something that I haven't had a lot of discussion around. I'm not sure. I know that I still hear a lot of character counts when I'm in our buildings, and we haven't talked about walking away from character counts. I think this is a layer that's coming into our classrooms to be able to talk about how we navigate the social.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you have any other?
One other question that I had that this kind of goes back to when we've discussed J191 on under policies and procedures, number 2, reduce the overall suspension rates. I think there's still concern among some of our teachers that if we're looking at reducing suspension rates, that even though we're telling principals that they have the leeway to suspend kids, that giving them this number to target will influence maybe kids not being suspended at the rate that they would be if they weren't trying to meet a specific target. So I have concerns just around that, and I'm just wondering if anybody else, if anyone would like to speak to that.
Okay, I'm not sure. I was looking at Ms. Horn when she was talking, so I'm not sure. Did you want to speak to that, Ms. Dethridge?
I did.
And what about you, Ms. Fugit?
Thank you.
Okay, so who was
Thank you,
first?
Madam
Go
Chair.
ahead, Ms.
I think,
Dethridge.
I have the same concern as you, because I know I've talked to several teachers where the principal in the building misunderstood. They think that means they don't do any suspensions, which I believe that has to be truly and clearly communicated from the superintendent down, that that's not what it means, because they use that as an excuse to not discipline or take care of the business in the building. So I've heard that happen as well. So I do have an issue and concern on how that is going to be implemented.
I agree, Gloria, and I think every time we've talked about J191, we've been assured that that the principals have leeway to suspend kids when they need to, and so I think that it is there. But as we all know, what plays out in real life in the schools is that we have principals who try to meet the metrics, and that affects the way that plays out in the classroom. And I think, going back to trying to retain and recruit teachers, part of, first of all, we know we need to pay them more, but we also need to make sure that teachers feel supported by their principals. So that's the underlying issue, I think, is we need to make sure that principals are supporting their teachers and the discipline that teachers are using in their classrooms so that they feel supported, and that will help us retain teachers.
Right, and the principal not use it as an excuse not to take care of business.
Right.
Ms. Fugit?
I agree with that point, but I do think there's something, I don't know how we word it, but I do think there is something positive in language saying that we want to get to the point that we don't have to suspend as many kids. I mean, our superintendent talks about creating a positive culture. If there's a positive culture, then hopefully you won't need to suspend. So I think we can look at that language very differently, and maybe we might suggest to staff taking another stab at clarifying that a little bit more, because I think the spirit of that is that we want our school climate to be such that there are not so many reasons to suspend, but I also agree the easy way out is to say, I can't suspend kids. And that isn't what we want our building level administrators to do, so.
Right. I think you're right. I think the spirit of, I think we agree that in spirit it's great, but maybe we just need to reword that language.
They're making
Dr.
notes.
Davis, so that we can have, so that it's clear and principals understand that, as Ms. Dethridge stated, we need to take care of business in the classroom, and hopefully from all the things that are happening, that number will come down.
I can work with staff and we can reword that, send it to the board, and see if it's something that you are receptive to, and then make the change.
Well, I don't know. I think the wording is not necessarily, you can say whatever you want to say, but we have a policy and we just need to make sure they follow the policy. And if it means that it gets to the point where they need to be suspended, that they do that also. So now that we have approved of the policy, it's just a matter of making sure they follow the policy and do what the policy asks them to do.
One more. Okay. And one other thing on school communities. Number 2, clearly define the district's vision and goals for cultural competency and ensure all employees understand and embrace them. I think maybe we need to look at wording on that. Maybe ensure that KCS will educate all employees on cultural competencies. I'm not sure that we can force people to embrace them, because I don't think that people are going to agree 100% of the time. So I think we need to look at that language on number 2.
Where was that, Ms. Horn? It's under.
It's school communities, number 2.
Oh, okay.
On goal 3.
Okay.
I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Dethridge, is your light still on because you want to speak, or, okay. And then we'll go to Ms. Owen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. After the community has had time to look at this a little further, I would like to see us take this into maybe an extended work session. I don't feel like we've really done our due diligence as a board in creating this plan. I think it's more of, usually when we talk about the division of responsibility, we're talking about policy versus procedure. I think establishing a vision and a long-range plan for the district is more of a board responsibility that we have largely put on our administration. And though we need all those pieces as part of our plan, I think when we get down to looking at wording and exactly what we want to say in each place, I think we need to do that as a full board instead of going back and forth with it with the administration. I think if this is the vision of the board, then the board needs to look at creating that language together. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Dethridge.
I think the board delegated this to a committee, and I think the committee met with the community. And we've had a chance to look at it and massage it and make our input. I don't see us having to sit down and have a whole nother meeting on this strategic plan. I think a lot of the board members have made their suggestions or have their comments, and I think we should continue to do that. But once it goes to the community, I think they'll have their comments. But we can sit and look at this and do the same thing we did with the discipline policy, and it'd be another year down the road. I think we don't need to continue looking at it over and over and over. This is just my opinion. But we need to look at it, make our observations. I think they took the information that were given to them, and they wrote it up, and now it's our job to look at it and make changes and recommendations. But to have another complete sit-down meeting, I don't think that would be beneficial to what we're trying to do in the time frame we have. If we want to go ahead and have the strategic plan, or we're going to continue to operate on the one we still have, which people are not really happy with, we need to go ahead and move on with this one and put it in place. It's a living document. You can always go back and adjust some things as you go on down the line, but I just think we need to go ahead and make our decision and move on.
Okay. We've heard Ms. Dethridge's opinion, and we've heard Ms. Owen's opinion, and we're back over here to Ms. Horn.
Thank
Did you
you.
have a comment on theirs or
Well,
another comment?
one comment and then I have a question. I think that I would like to have a little more time to consider this plan, because I think it's with the July 4th holiday, there's just not been a lot of time for public input. So I think that we should certainly take at least the next month until our next work session to consider the plan at minimum. My question is, like, for instance, on the appendix and at the end under goal 3, would the metrics be obtained with a survey at the end of every school year? Can somebody talk about what the thought is with obtaining the baseline for this school year and then thereafter?
Dr. Davis.
Yes, and basically with the metrics, what we did was we asked the departments to send in a set of metrics, and we looked at those, and they seemed reasonable. That was fine, but we sent those all through REA to vet those, and a lot of the pieces will be done through surveys. We'll have to use surveys to get at what we're trying to find out, so we'll use surveys to get at that information.
So are you envisioning like one big survey that goes out to the whole district at the end of the school year? That's kind of what I was wondering.
I'm going to let Mr. Beckett address that.
Thank you.
Let me explain what we did this last year. We had a big one that went out to parents. It was part originally with the parent and family and what it's called, the opportunity. It's a state law that says that each principal has to respond to a survey on how did you interact with your parents in the school. So what we did, our department, we kicked out a survey that had all the questions that the principals were going to have to answer on their survey. So we included those, but we went ahead and included a few more. And so for those questions that we already had, you see that we have where the baseline, and there's a number already put in there. That's because we've actually already asked that particular question. Okay. And so for those that are in terms of a perception data that we're looking for, that without a number, we will have to include that in next year. So we had a survey that went forth for everybody. We put out like 60,000 of them. And
do you remember how many you got back roughly?
It was actually, it was better than I thought. It was somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000. And considering that the initial survey that we used with the strategic plan had around 5,000. So we had actually more representation with some of this data than that survey.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, just to address the discipline issue, and we have the Principals Institute Thursday, Friday, so I'll be addressing principals. Once again, a reminder to the principals, we're going to have discipline, we're going to have order in our classroom so teachers can teach and students can learn. And I'll make that perfectly clear. What we hope to do with positive behavioral intervention systems and restorative practice is reduce the number of infractions. We hope to help children who have a problem behaving to learn to behave. But if you don't learn to behave and you're not going to behave, then we're going to have order in our classrooms and we'll follow the policy. But the principals will have discretion too in terms of how they handle the situation. So I tried to make that point last year, and I'll make it again this year, and with the goal of reducing the infractions, reducing suspensions. Hopefully, chronic absenteeism plays into this too. The state looks at the absenteeism and not telling, hey, principals, this is your goal, don't suspend more than this number. That's not what this is about. Just like graduation's not about handing a person a diploma and it not meaning what we say it means. So, you know, I will impress upon principals again that point, and we'll be looking at this year, and hopefully the suspensions will be less, but again, we're going to have discipline and order in our classrooms, and we're going to support our teachers in their efforts to do the very best job that they do every day with teaching students. So I just wanted to make that point, Madam Chair. Board, thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. And I'm thinking part of the issue also may be in that is principals fearing that if their numbers do not come down, that, you know, there might be a punitive aspect to it. So I'm sure you will be very concise in how you address them, that, you know, in the end, as you said, it's going to be order in the classroom. And even if maybe the numbers don't look like we hoped they would, that as long as they are maintaining order, that is in fact our first priority. Because and just one more comment, Ms. Jackson, did I hear you say that we now have social emotional standards? Is it from the state now?
Competencies. So it's not necessarily standards that will be measured in the same way as we would reading or math standards, but it's more about demonstrating competency for that self-management.
All right. So just to be very clear, this is not, and this is really for the classroom teachers listening, this is not another curriculum to be implemented type of scenario, like, you know, we have the anti-bullying curriculum, and I understand the melding, the meshing, the integration. I understand that, but I want to be sure that they don't hear that this is another
I appreciate that, because that is, you are correct. Yes.
Okay.
So thank you for clarifying that.
You bet.
Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just along the lines of what Mr. Thomas was saying there about meeting with the principals, it might be a very good time with the beginning of school, and I know the principals will have, some will have more than others, but they'll have their faculty assembled probably at least 3 or 4 times in meetings before the kids get there. And with the restorative practice training that we've been doing and everything we're still doing, if you just read about that, I can see how some of the teachers would be really concerned that they were not going to have the control that they once had. So it might be a really good time for you to stress to the principals right here at the beginning of the year, we need to be clear on this. We are going to support you, and you will maintain control in your classroom, and we'll make sure of that. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other discussion, I want to just make note that Commissioner Evelyn Gill did come in. I think she's left, but she was here, and she came in after our meeting had started. So, Ms. Roundtree, we're ready for public forum.
We have one speaker signed up for public forum, Kim Kredich.
Hi, Kim Kredich, Knox County. Hope your summer vacation is going well. I am going to give public comment on Wednesday, but I did notice that I looked over the agenda and I was interested to see that the public forum itself, I just got here, so I wasn't here for the discussion if there was any about it, was up. So I thought I was actually sort of surprised to see the statement that the board can ask questions of anybody who addresses the board. And I'm not sure if that changed, because my understanding from years and years back was that we just talked and you were just there to listen. Maybe it's changed, maybe it hasn't, but I wonder why nobody asks any questions. And, you know, a few years back, we were promised, a lot of people hung their hopes on the promise that you all would have a workshop to learn about special ed. A lot of people, like tons of people. And I reached out to my school board member and was, you know, very nicely told that that didn't happen and that sometimes things just don't make it through. But that's where I would say, then how do you know? How do you know about all of this? It just doesn't seem that the policies that you have to uphold the least restrictive environment are really perfectly explained to you, and the only way I can get in touch with you is by coming up here. But now I know that you could actually ask me questions, and I would welcome you to do that. I'm an open book. You could ask me anything. You could say, hey, we have an ombudsman, why don't you refer everybody to her? And I'd say, I do. And then the parents come back to me. You could say, how do people get your name? And I could tell you, well, most of my referrals are from Knox County school teachers and service providers who see me in meetings. And they're very scared for their administration to know. And so I keep it confidential who refers them. There's a lot that I don't think you know. And right now, I think I've figured out the biggest problem, and I think you've gotten the complaints about the course code. So I'm going to address that on Wednesday. And if you're not going to if you're not going to learn, as I think was promised, about the intricacies of special ed, then I'm going to send you just a few podcasts that I really hope you'll listen to. I'm going to do that. I'm going to email you that. And I'm going to come to you, I try to come to you with every intention to explain what I believe and have been right about in the past, like preschool least restrictive environment. Now we are in compliance with the law because we're placing many, many kids with significant disabilities in inclusive settings. That didn't just magically happen that all of a sudden all these kids with significant disabilities could be included in the regular ed setting. So I'm really working for the school. I'm not sure what you've heard. I'd love you to challenge me on any of the crazy rumors that there are around here, but I do get referred to parents by the majority, regular ed teachers, OTs, PTs, speech therapists. So that might surprise you. And I would just hope that you would, as a Knox County school parent, still of a junior, my twins are now in college. I've been here since 2005, working really hard, spending my volunteer time, going to these IEP meetings, upholding the rights of kids, and trying to work at a systemic level. So if you have a question for me, after you listen to maybe a podcast by Dr. Julie Costin up at Syracuse University, who holds huge workshops for special ed directors, superintendents, who are committed to inclusive schooling. I wish we were. I wish we were. I hope you'll ask them of me. And that's all I wanted to put out there, that now I know you can. And if you don't ask me questions, I guess I'm going to assume that you have the answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, that concludes public forum.
Okay, we have board forum, and we'll start over here with Ms. Self. Do you have anything tonight? Okay, Ms. Dethridge, Ms. Owen, Mr. Norman, Ms. Roundtree.
Just really quickly, if you haven't signed up and participated in the Knox County Public Library, the summer reading clubs that are from listeners, so your child doesn't even have to be reading yet. They can be in preschool all the way up through high school. You can still, I think there's still time to get involved and do that, and so hopefully everyone is reading this summer so you don't have the summer slide when you come back in August.
Okay, Ms. Fugit, Ms. Horn, Bill, Mr. Oh, I'm sorry, what? We're at the end. Everybody's done, yeah.
Madam Chair, I did want the superintendent to I wanted to ask him a question or two about Project Grad. Just basically, would you summarize the sort of the financial status that we're in right now with Grad relative to the commission's actions, et cetera?
Yes, sir. Be glad to do that. The board approved in May the Project Grad agreement, which I think the amount was $500,000 in this coming year's budget, or this year's budget now, this July 1. $500,000 to provide the services at the two Project Grad high schools, Austin East and Fulton. At the commission meeting last week, the 25th, I think it was, the Knox County Commission approved $365,000 to fund Project Grad for 1 year. So that's in their budget. So the total budget for Project Grad, if you look at the school funds and Knox County Commission funds, $865,000. Next year, as we talked about the budget process, the $500,000 doesn't fully pay for the services provided to the two high schools. I think the number that was given to us was roughly $700,000. So when the board entertains this discussion next year, what we're paying $500,000 for this year would actually cost $700,000 for the next year. And that's pretty much, I think, sums it up. So.
Okay. Do we have plans for evaluating the effectiveness of
Yes.
Grad in a different way from what we did last year?
Well, the metrics, I know our REA team worked on metrics along with Project Grad that has to do with the graduation rates. It also has to do with the number of students, increasing the number of students who are eligible for the scholarship, which is, I think, it's a 2.5 grade point average, and then also attending summer institutes. So those, the Grad would report out to us this coming December is not really fair. Just having this agreement in place, this would be a baseline year, but the subsequent year in December, then they would come back using the metrics and report to the board as to how much progress has been made.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. If that's all, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move adjourn.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Roundtree, seconded by Mr. Norman. Meeting is adjourned.